Close towards the end of the COP. So thank you for taking the time and the effort to come and join us here. My name is Gareth Phillips. I'm the manager of climate and environmental finance at the African Development Bank. I'm going to moderate today's event. I'm also going to give a small presentation, but without slides, to kind of help set the scene a little bit. So I'll start. I'll say a little bit about Article 6. And a bit about Article 6.8 and the adaptation benefits mechanism. My colleague Gibson Kiragu from Kenya will tell us about the Article 6.8 negotiations and the current status of those. And then we'll hear from my colleague Monique Motti about a project that's being implemented in West Africa with funding from the German program IKI, International Climate Initiative. She'll tell you a little bit about that. And then we'll have a panel where I will ask some questions to some of our panelists who are sitting at the front of the room. And hopefully at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for some Q&A. So I think without further ado, I will just say a little bit about Article 6. So you see the title of our event behind me is Promoting Adaptation through Article 6. So we're going to focus mostly on Article 6.8. But I just wanted to explain a little bit about Article 6 itself, because it is quite a special and important part of the negotiations. And it has a long history going back to the Kyoto Protocol and what we used to call the flexibility mechanisms that were specifically focused on emissions trading and carbon offsets, mitigation offsets and so on, now called mitigation outcomes under Article 6.2 or internationally tradable mitigation outcomes or Article 6.2 and mitigation outcomes under Article 6.4 or the other way around, I can't remember. But anyway, Article 6.8 is the non-market approaches, and it is the result of objections really from mostly Bolivia during the days of the Clean Development Mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol. And they used to talk about not commoditizing Mother Nature. And it wasn't maybe very polite, but when I was younger, we always used to roll our eyes a little bit when the Bolivian negotiator would get the microphone and start saying, oh, we need to respect Mother Nature and so. But I have to say, I've become a complete convert. I now see that Article 6.8, as framed in the Paris Agreement, provides us with some really interesting opportunities. And in the end, I think it can be more efficient, more cost-effective, and more equitable than a market-based approach. And it is for that reason that I think that non-market approaches are the future of climate finance. I think it is the way that we can go. Not going to happen immediately, but in 5 or 10 years' time, I can see that non-market approaches will have a much larger role to play. But let me just take a step back again and talk a little bit about Article 6 in general. Article 6 allows us to create new kinds of assets that are for sale to make projects bankable. And as I said, we saw this really becoming very well developed under the Clean Development Mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol. So back then in the early 2000s, you were trying to develop a renewable energy project, but it wasn't financially competitive against fossil fuel. Fossil fuel was more profitable because the solar panels were too expensive. What the Article 6, and in those days the Clean Development Mechanism allowed you to do, was to generate certified emission reductions, which provided an additional source of revenue. So not only did you have electricity to sell, but you also had carbon credits to sell. And typically, we valued those at $10 a ton. And when you put in a cash flow of $10 a ton, which equated, it was measured against a baseline, it was generally approximately $10 per megawatt hour of electricity that you produced, then renewable energy suddenly became financially attractive and became more attractive than fossil fuel. And that's what stimulated huge amounts of investment into renewable energy and wind and solar power in particular. And it contributed to a great growth in those technologies, a falling in price and so on. So Article 6 under the Paris Agreement still allows us this ability to create this new asset. And as I say, in 6.2 and 6.4, it's ITMOs and mitigation outcomes. But in Article 6.8, it's more flexible. It doesn't define what the asset that you create are. It just says, you know, it allows you to do so. And that asset comes into the capital stack. If you think about mobilizing the money or getting the money that you need to build your project, that money comes in and into the capital stack. And you can think of it as a free grant, or I call it an investment grant. It's free money because it's something that otherwise didn't exist. You create it by following a process. It's a what we call a paper-based or a policy-based market. It's not that you're actually producing like pairs of shoes or papaya that you've got to sell. You're producing something that exists as an electronic record in a registry by following procedures. So it's a new source of finance that comes into the capital stack, and it helps make the project financially attractive. Now, the difference between 6.2 and 6.4, which are known as the market-based approaches, and Article 6.8 is non-market, is that in the market-based approaches, there isn't any means of limiting the amount of money that you can create from the sale of those assets. And if you're a private sector project developer looking to maximize your profit, then you're looking for projects that have a very small amount of money required or a quick payback period, and then a long period of this free money coming in, because that's just pure profit. So you can make a lot of money from the right kind of market-based project by generating and selling carbon. In the non-market approaches, the way that we've developed it under the adaptation benefits mechanism, and perhaps more generally, you don't have that speculative element. And for various reasons, it's a bit technical, I won't go into it, but they are described in this little brochure that we have here, which you're welcome to take a copy of. In this situation, we limit the number of certified adaptation benefits that you create. That's the asset that we're created under Article 6.8. Other people may create others, but that's what we're creating. We create certified adaptation benefits, we limit the number of them, and we price them so that the number you generate multiplied by the price equals the financial barrier to the project. So it means we get enough money to insert capital stack to make the project cross the threshold to become bankable. But after that, you don't get any more money from it. So we like to say that you make a living from it because you can pay yourself a salary from the project costs, but you don't make a killing. You don't make this huge return from selling credits after you've paid off the financial barrier to the project. And that's a very interesting and I think an important difference, because it shows that every dollar you spend under Article 6.8 goes to overcoming the financial barrier to the project, and it doesn't feed into a profit model. And when we're trying to make climate finance work as best we can, make every dollar work, that becomes quite significant. And that is why, fundamentally, that is why I believe that the non-market approaches will be the future of climate finance. Because if we're going to ask emitters to contribute towards the cost of adaptation, then I think we owe it to them to say, and every dollar you give, that you pay through this instrument, it all goes to overcoming the barriers. It's not a profit-making activity. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's my sort of brief introduction about how Article 6 helps us mobilize money and why Article 6.8 is particularly interesting. I'm going to invite Gibson to come up and take the podium now and tell us a little bit about where we are with the Article 6.8 negotiations. And then we'll have Monique to tell us about the PACO project in West Africa. It's over to you. If you can take about 7 minutes, okay?
Thank you, Gareth. How are you? I want us to understand a bit about the negotiations in Article 6.8. I'm Gibson Kirago from Kenya. I'm one of the negotiators and in the delegation, having started doing this work from the time of the Paris Agreement, 2015. The Article 6.8 negotiations takes place in what is called the Glasgow Committee on Non-Markets, which is established by the decision for CMA 3. Now you realize that this committee is not individuals. It is all the parties form the committee, and it's usually formed in terms of a workshop that happens the second or that day immediately you start the meetings. Whether it's a substa and it's under substa, it's opened by the substa chair, and then presentations are done. This is the place where observers and other people, international organizations, can come and do presentation on their non-market practices, their experiences and their weaknesses and the things that they would want to see developed under Article 6.8. Immediately after the presentations, the presenters form what we call World Cafe round tables, and they sit and they ask questions and they answer, and the points are corrected from the participants, and even observers here can participate. It's not crossed up. And after that review, there is a plenary meeting where the feelings of people are given. And after that, the facilitators or the co-chairs draft whatever they have gathered from that workshop and form 2-3 topics from the plenary, which becomes part of what we call spin-off groups. Now, the spin-off groups would meet now in another time, in another day, and in these spin-off groups, you give your inputs to the topics that have been given as a party, and you can also influence as an observer, and then those spin-off groups, they form the draft text. And that draft text that is made by the co-chairs, usually that draft is now given to what we call informal consultation. In what we are still at the substar, it has not that time gone to the CMA. So those informal consultations are done, and people, now here we have the parties that are actually doing the formal consultations, not the observers. So now it starts becoming narrower and narrower, and you reach a level where you have now the formal contact group that after the consultations, they are summarized, and the formal contact group of parties meet, and they agree on the draft substar at conclusion. Like now for us, we did it on Saturday, it was passed, and we passed it on to CMA. So from Monday, we are now discussing the draft, where this time we were discussing the non-market platform, how it is accessible and how people are benefiting from it, how NMAs are being posted there. The first one to be put there was adaptation benefit mechanism. The second one was Subaru, who are here with us. And the third one is between, I think, Chile and Canada, which is also represented here, might be represented here. Now, after that meeting now at the CMA, we are doing the draft, and we are doing a review in accordance to Decision 4, CMA 3. You'll find article paragraph 10 talks about review after 2 years. So we are doing review after Glasgow, and this review we are giving input so that under the annex of Decision 4, CMA 3, paragraph 9, it says you shall be invited, parties will be invited, observers will be invited to give their views by March 2026 concerning the changes. They may find that when they were registering, when they were selecting, when they were assessing their normal non-market approaches in their country, what problem did you face? As I conclude, I want to say that one of the challenges we've been having is by the parties is taking use of the people who have said they have support. There are many people in the non-market platform who have said they have support, but very few people are taking that support to benefit from adaptation, mitigation, or finance, or capacity building, all the means of implementation, so long as you do not deal with carbon credit. It's the only article that does not deal with carbon credit. So as I finish, now, today we were doing negotiations. We're still informal. We were doing some hurdles. We hope that by tomorrow we will have a new draft, which by and by we want to conclude by the CMA before we close on Friday. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before you go, Gibson, so in my introduction, I said that I think that non-market approaches will be the future of climate finance. Do you think anybody in the Article 6.8 negotiations shares that view? Do the parties see the potential of non-market approaches, or are they just, is it a sideshow as playing second fiddle to markets?
Yes, you know, what has happened is that Article 6 is the crucible of implementation of the previous chapters, adaptation, mitigation, and then it's a bridge to the other chapters that are talking about finances, capacity building, and all the 3 means of implementation. Now, in Article 6, which is the central part of either market or non-market, there are ways of raising funds, ways of funding, and it is only 6.8 where you can fund adaptation. And most of the NDCs, most of the, okay, sorry, most of the NDCs that are coming, especially from the global south, they are heavily on adaptation. They are heavily of requests for finances. They are heavily of requests for capacity building. They are heavily on requests of technology transfer. Now, all these you can only accept, reach to them through Article 6.8. And as the CDM is closing down and all those other things about finances to the adaptation fund is dwindling, we are finding that now more people are seeing the potential that in 6.8, because there are so many people who want to fund, but not through carbon markets, not carbon credits. They want to fund as their obligation to the NDC and to humanity. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Super. So let me invite, thank you, Gibson. Let me invite Monique to come to the podium. And we need to stand here because I know at least Lucy in our secretariat at least is watching online. So she wants to be able to see you, so you have to stand behind the podium. So Monique works in the ABM secretariat with us in Abidjan. Although she works from her home in DRC. And she's going to tell you about a project called PACO, which I won't try and tell you what stands for, but I'm sure you can, and how we're using it for ABM funding. Monique, over to you for about 7 minutes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Garrett. So the project that I am managing has a component that's part of PACO. PACO is a project for adaptation of climate change in West African countries that's financed by the German Ministry of International Development, GIZ. And through that partnership, they accompany several countries that they have identified into increasing their resilience to climate change. And part of that program, how we come into play, is that we actually go over one project that is selected amongst several, and we go through their methodology so that we can follow through and identify how to measure resiliency in a project. And why that's important, it's because as Garrett was mentioning, the adaptation benefit mechanism is focused on resiliency and providing a certification for adaptation projects. And so in order to ensure that the project actually fulfills that mandate, you need to have a methodology that also has been vetted by expert. And so through the PACO project, we go through that process of selecting a project and vetting that entire methodology in order not only to increase on the database that we have of several accredited methodology, but also in order for the project to be certified and to be able to go and get some financing. So that is how we work with GIZ. We work in 4 pilot countries right now: Senegal, Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, and Congo Brazzaville. We have advanced quite a bit with regards to Benin. They did an open call for projects to be reviewed through the project, through the program. And so we have selected one that will go through the methodology, and we will go through the same process for the other countries over the next 2 years. So that's what I can say about our involvement with PACO and how the adaptation benefit mechanism is being tested with another partners program as well.
Great, thank you very much indeed. I was going to ask you which the countries were, but you've said that. Do you know which project has been selected in Benin?
So in each of the countries, there are 4 projects that are selected for each countries, and we only go through the methodology of one of those projects. So out of the four, out of the four, right? Yeah, out of the four, then we only select one, and we go through the for the criterias. What we try to look for is diversity in the type of methodology that the adaptation benefit mechanism can have. So the more diverse we have of a repertoire, the better it is for future developers to be able to select some of the methodologies that we have. So we select based on that. What's the added value of the projects there to our mechanism?
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Monique, for that description. So that covers the PACO project. That will be 4 more projects coming into our ABM pipeline, along with a number that we already have. And we're going to hear in the next panel from a couple of our project developers who already have projects in that process. And then we also have a pipeline of other projects coming through. And we can talk a bit more about how we enter into that process. So now with that, I'll just recover my phone. I'm going to invite our panelists to come and join me on the panel. So first of all, we have Hiroaki Machi, who is the Director of Global Environmental Affairs Office in Japan, who's responsible, please come and sit, for the Subaru a non-market approach, which, as Gibson said, is the second approach to be listed on the platform. He's going to be joined by Ms. Asiatu Faye Sao from the Senegal Waste Management Authority. Asiatu is responsible for developing one of our pilot projects. Then we're going to welcome Omar Saleh, who is the CEO of WaveSave, which is one of our adaptation pilot projects. And finally, he will be joined by Kouassi Amani, who's from Cote d'Ivoire, and is working on one of our demonstration projects dealing with climate resilient cocoa production. So I have a couple of questions for each of the panelists, and then we can see where we go time-wise and if we want to have more of a discussion. So Hiroaki, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Japan has recorded a non-market approach. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I had 2. Japan has recorded a non-market approach under the UNFCCC called Subaru, which is about adaptation technology transfer to member countries. How do you see cooperation with the adaptation benefits mechanism, given that the ABM is technology neutral, meaning that there are no restrictions on where the technology comes from, provided that it provides the most adequate solution?
Thank you so much for such a great opportunity to join, and also I appreciate a lot of audience kindly come despite the very evening. So I try to contribute as much as possible here. So regarding the question, let me share how I see the relationship between the ABM and the Subaru project, which Japanese government is committing. So the first, the Japanese government recognized ABM as a very powerful tool to accelerate the implementation or adaptation of measures in developing countries. On the other hand, the Japanese government is very proud of our technologies with Japanese companies, which can provide a lot of the solutions to save the people with less cost or higher, possibility to save the life. So in this regard, the Subaru initiative is a kind of a matching, matching the scheme to meet the municipalities and then such companies with a lot of the latest technologies under the relationship with the UN Habitat. So my point is that Subaru project and then the ABM must be the complementary, because the Subaru project can provide the needs and the solutions matching with the technologies. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that also matches very well with my understanding, because as I learned more about Subaru and more generally about providing the adaptation, meeting the needs, the ABM is a means of providing the finance that can create the ability to purchase the technology. And so, you know, I think the two can work very well together. Okay, thank you. Yeah, yeah. Did you want to answer that again? Or no? Okay, okay, okay. So we'll go now to Asiatu. So we'll do one question each, and then we'll come around for a second question. Asiatu, as a representative of the Senegal Waste Management Authority, you are working on establishing a women-led plastic collection and recycling facility in the city of Kaolack in Senegal. And I'm sorry, you're getting dripped on from the, it's just a little bit of water. Sorry about that. So you're working on developing this women-led plastic collection and recycling facility in Kaolack in Senegal. This would also be one of the ABM demonstration projects, and yet waste management is not a typical area for adaptation action. It doesn't, you know, it's not something that springs to mind as being something particularly driving adaptation. So what is the climate rationale behind your project, and how are you planning to measure the adaptation benefits that your project will produce?
Thank you, Garrett, for giving us the floor today in order to present the first ABM project in Senegal. I'm Aissatou, and I'm from the National Waste Management Company of Senegal. So our project is named Sustainable Plastic Recycling to enhance the climate resilience of local communities in the city of Kaolack. So the project is about establishing a facility, a recycling facility, as a measure against flooding in the city of Kaolack. So it's a city in the south of Dakar region that has a very important economic activities. So a lot of plastic waste is being produced, and we also have issues in Senegal with waste management. Only 59% of the waste is collected nationwide. So the rest of the waste is in the environment, so clogging drainage, rainwater canals, which causes flooding. So the climate dividend, to come to your question, of the project, it lies in the relation between circular economy and resilience, because plastic pollution is not only an environmental issue, it's also a driver of climate vulnerability. So when the plastic clogs the drainage canals and makes the soils impermeable, they intensify flooding. So especially in like urban cities like Kaolack, and every year the floods are being disproportionately affecting women and children, and it's destroying homes and incomes and local infrastructure. So by acting upstream, recycling, collecting the plastic, we are, the project directly strengthen adaptation capacities of the population. So that's the link here between climate change and
Very good, thank you.
thank you very much.
I saw, the first time I saw this idea of women-led plastic recycling was in the city of Da Nang in, I think in Vietnam. We went for the Jeff 7 replenishment meetings there. So this was, I think, 6 or more years ago. And there they have a very successful women-led recycling industry, which in fact was so successful that the women were going around, they had bicycles or wheelbarrows, they could get one or the other, and they were collecting not just plastic, but also aluminium and tin and other scrap metals and so on. And there was a very successful market for the recycled materials. And as a result, all that waste was being cleaned up and collected, separated out of the waste stream, which then meant that the composting opportunity was much better because it wasn't contaminated with all the other waste. So I think that's really great. And it's very interesting to hear this link to the circular economy, because we also know that there's a growing interest in circular economy and recovering particularly critical minerals, but also recovering these kinds of recyclable materials that can be used. And I think we may be able to tap into funding as well from the circular economy developments that are going on. So very pleased to hear your answer on that. Let's go now to Omar. You're leading a private sector adaptation technology provider who has provided and replicated several mobile flood barrier projects in Africa, demonstrating the ABM. And you're also one of the candidates for issuing the first certified adaptation benefits. Can you briefly explain in which cases your technology offers the most effective solution and elaborate why you became involved with the adaptation benefits mechanism?
Thank you, Gareth, for the question. So indeed, we are from the Netherlands. We provide solutions for water-related challenges, in particular the mobile flood barrier. Imagine a rubber bag that you fill with water, and you can deploy it very rapidly to enhance resilience to flooding. So that's a highly community-driven solution. It's not a big infrastructure project what take years or tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a very relatively small size project, community-driven, to help communities enhance resilience to flooding. What has always been baffling to me, actually starting COP in Glasgow, that is the fact that we have this solution. We know there's a need. If I ask Senegal, Ivory Coast, or Kenya, do you have issues with flooding? Do your communities have issues with flooding? Everyone will say yes. So we have a solution, we have a need, there is funding, but somehow these three cannot come together. So we are very privileged to take part in the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism program to hopefully overcome that issue. You know, we as a technology provider, we want to scale up. The communities, they need help, so they need to help have solutions against flooding. So I think this ABM methodology, it will help us try to figure out how can we mobilize funding to scale up. We did a project already in Kenya, where we were quite effective in helping the communities over there, also in Burundi and Uganda and Nigeria. So we know it's an effective solution, but I think to take it a step further, we need to have the ABM running. That will help us catalyze SlamDam, or that's our product name, projects all over the continent.
Great, thank you very much. And SlamDam, I know I introduced you as the CEO of WaveSave, but I know you as Mr. SlamDam. And it's a very onomatopoeic name. You know, when I say to you SlamDam, I think you can quite quickly understand what the concept is this rubber sausage that you pump full of water, and it holds the water back up to a depth of about a meter. I think so just to be clear, obviously the technology, the SlamDam units cost a certain amount of money. They have to have a pump to fill them with water. You need to train the community how to use them and so on. That all has a cost associated with it. And not many municipalities in African cities or in developing countries, they don't have the money to pay for that technology, even though they know that they have the need for the flood defenses, but they don't have the money. So the ABM helps us raise the money to purchase the equipment and to train the workers. And when I say the workers, the people who will deploy the equipment. And every time the equipment is deployed, we will generate some certified adaptation benefits and put them up for sale. And maybe, for example, after they have been deployed 10 times and we've generated 10 adaptation benefits for their use, then the community will have received enough money to pay back the loan, or maybe the municipality will have received enough money to pay back the loan that they took out in order to buy the equipment in the first place. So that's what we mean when we say that the adaptation benefits give the project developers the ability to access the capital markets, because we give them a cash flow that they can use to pay back the debt. Is that about right? Yep, good. Okay, excellent. So let me go to our last panelist, Amani Kouassi, who is a representative at the Center for International Forestry Research, Agroforestry Research, is it? Anyway, ICRAF C4. I'm sure many of you know ICRAF, the very famous agroforestry center in Nairobi, and they teamed up with C4, which is the Center for International Forestry Research. Amani, you're the project lead on our first ABM demonstration project. So we have our two demonstration projects here. And this aims at cocoa resilience, climate resilient cocoa production in Cote d'Ivoire. Your project is another candidate for the issuance of certified adaptation benefits. And I wonder if you would share with us how you developed the adaptation benefit mechanism in Cote d'Ivoire, how it influenced your thinking, and where and how adaptation and the ABM is going to help with the cocoa production in Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me to this evening. The ABM project in the cocoa sector in Cote d'Ivoire we came up with the project because we have been working on the cocoa sector for decades. I mean, we by C4 Aircraft. And we have even a global adaptation program that we call Tree Adapt. Tree Adapt uses a set of tools from vulnerability analysis to implementation. So we were lacking something, how to mobilize private sector finance into adaptation. And this was a question that so far we didn't find the right solution. And based on that, we engaged into ABM. So we overlaid an ABM component on one project that was existing, a project that we were running with Mars, a chocolate industry. So we developed the methodology and how concretely the thinking has been evolving. Currently, our organization is more optimistic, I would say, in terms of adaptation finance mobilization. As I said, we have tools, but we were lacking tools for mobilizing adaptation finance in our Tree Adapt program. So yeah, what I can say right now.
Great, thank you very much. So, and just a little bit of flavor of the, the project. What we see is that at the moment the cocoa trees are growing in full sunlight, and under those conditions they become increasingly stressed, and they typically die between the age of 19 and 25 years, after which they need to be replanted. And sometimes the cocoa growers will move to a new area, clear forest, and replant in those conditions. When you plant them in the agroforestry model with some shade, then they typically last as long as 60 years, and they're more productive. So you get twice as much lifetime from the projects, and you can see that obviously creates a much better example. But there are costs for the farmers to make that transition. And in this case, the sale of the adaptation benefits will help cover those costs. It will pay for the training, for the seedlings, the planting, the technology that we use to keep the trees alive. It will help the cocoa farmers learn about how to generate some other income generating crops whilst they wait for the cocoa trees to mature, because they take 7 years before they start yielding significant amounts of cocoa. So the ABM revenues will help see those farmers through that lean period and help them cover the costs of that transaction. And I'm sure everybody here loves chocolate, so you're going to think that that is a really important activity, because really, if we don't get on top of this, we will find that chocolate will become increasingly scarce, the prices will go up, and there will be a lot of negative impacts as we try to relocate chocolate production or cocoa growth to new areas of forest. It will trigger forest clearance. So let me start again with Amani. Coming back to your project, how do you intend to measure the adaptation projects, the adaptation benefits that you're going to produce?
Yeah, as Gareth already mentioned, we will our project intend to deliver certified adaptation benefit as hectares of cocoa plantation under resilient practices, which is equivalent of at least 60% or 65% of increased cocoa survival rate. Because currently, the cocoa landscape in Cote d'Ivoire and other neighboring countries in West Africa are really degraded, and farmers are urgently needing to regenerate their farms, and there is high mortality in cocoa trees, and this is a big issue. So 1 hectare of cocoa under resilient practice delivers at least 60 or 65% of increase in cocoa survival rate, and also extending productivity, because as I said, typically the monoculture cocoa farm that were previously practiced, they die out around 20 or 25 years after planting. And after that, farmers, the first reflex was to go further into new forests and slash trees down and establish new ones. So it will be no longer like that. So the 1 hectare cocoa plantation and the resilient practice will deliver as well cocoa farm that have extended lifespan, so that they can produce to more than 60 years. And more than that, there is provision in the methodology so that the implementation cocoa agroforestry cannot take place in protected area. So in the monitoring system, it's all a package, but that we include into one indicator that we call resilient cocoa plantation. 1 hectare of resilient cocoa plantation. It's a whole package.
Great, thank you very much. And this, of course, is not just relevant in Cote d'Ivoire, because all through West Africa, in Ghana, Togo, Nigeria, there's a lot of cocoa production. But what we find, of course, is very important is that the agroforestry systems need to be changed. It's not the same mixture of species across the whole area. They need to be developed for different soil types, different ecozones, and so on. And this is where the expertise of C4 ICRAF will come to play. Okay, let's go back to Omar. You've told us about the Slam Dam. Can you say a little bit more about how the ABM has helped you so far, and how do you expect that it will help scale up adaptation action and finance in the future?
Yeah, once again, thank you. Okay, we talked a little bit about the mobile flood barrier, what it does. We've developed a methodology, the ABM methodology, that helps us calculate the adaptation benefits. To simplify it, we have a baseline situation. So you can imagine you have a flooding at a community and there's no mobile flood barrier. You will have a certain amount of damage. You also have an adaptation scenario where you deploy the mobile flood barrier. The goal, obviously, is to have less damage. So the avoided losses, that is something we use to calculate the adaptation benefits. Now we define one credited adaptation benefit as avoided loss of $1,000, just to give you an idea of how we try to quantify that. And I think, especially in the quantification of these benefits, that helps us scale up, that helps us attract funding. Whether you are a financial institution or a private donor, or whoever, if you want to give money, you know what will come in return. So if we can inform them, hey, if you invest X amount, we can prevent this much losses, realize this many adaptation benefits, it will convince investors, financiers, to supply funding for a project. So that in itself is highly valuable for us. One note on that is that there will be some independent monitoring and evaluation, so we can, if we do a project, there's an independent party who will then verify, have these adaptation benefits truly been realized. And that is something I think will help us in the future for scale up.
Yeah. And Omar, do you have an idea of what an adaptation benefit is going to cost? How much you have to pay to generate this $1,000 of saved losses or avoided losses?
I think that we need to look at it at a case-to-case basis, but we did one in Kenya. Depending on the return period, I think it was about $800 was one of the I think estimations we had. Yeah.
So that was $800 would provide you with $1,000 of saved losses each time it floods. Yeah. So each time it floods, you're going to save about $1,000 of avoided loss. That's going to go on multiple times. Going to be more floods coming, more years. And the investment in that is in the region of €800. In that example, $800. The figures change because it's more expensive to do projects in some areas than others. But what we ensure through that pricing process is that there's transparency and value for money. Now let's go to Aissatou, sorry. So you're doing the plastics project in Senegal. We're only funding, or we're hoping to raise money for you for one small demonstration project. What do you see as the replication or expansion potential of your activity? And how would the private sector and the women be involved in that expanded scenario?
Yes, thank you very much, Gareth. In fact, the African Bank, the ACCF, through the African Bank, finances the very small project. It's a demonstration project. But at SONAGED, we have SONAGED works with other 45 municipalities. So at in Kaolack, we have an integrated center of valorization that is already available where the facility will be located. But on the other side, we also have other facilities that are being built in other regions of Senegal. And we are also working, as I said, with 45 other municipalities. So there is the potential here, the platform is here in order to replicate the project 45 more times.
Right.
So, and it actually fits our strategic vision in Sonaget, because that's the way we want to industrialize,
Industrialize.
yeah, the sector.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
thank you.
you're going to collect the plastic and it's going to be recycled. There are going to be some revenues from that. Why do you need additional support through the adaptation benefits mechanism?
In that way, in fact, I will put my finger on the gender side of the project. In Sonaged, we have a very strong gender policy. On over the 17,000 employees, 49 of them are women. So this is a way of empowering women. You know, they are the first affected by floods consequences, women and children. So empowering women will help, through this project, it will help create economic revenues for them and move them from victims to actors of change, agents of change.
Thank you.
Thank
What
you
I
very
was
much.
also that's very interesting. I was expecting you or thinking that you were going to say that the cost of the technology, setting up the processing plants, training people and so on, again, it's a financial barrier. The municipality, the waste management company, they don't have the money to do this. You know, we know it's a good thing to do, but nobody has the money to pay for it. So the ABM provides that source of additional finance to plug the gap, to get to a stage where we would have recycling centers, facilities to clean and process the plastic and then sell a recycled product back into the industry.
Yeah, you said it all.
Yep.
I just forgot to mention that
Great.
because financially we have limits because we depend on government funding 100%. So with these kind of projects and with other initiatives such as Subaru, etc., it can help leverage other financial levers in order to finance the type of technology that will be used in this kind of projects.
Great,
Yes.
great. Thank you very much.
much.
Super. So, Hiroaki, I'll come back to you for our last question before I open the floor to the panel. What advantages do you see in international cooperation via non-market approaches compared to the carbon market-based approaches?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, no market approaches does not create a credit. So that's why if we talk about the economic perspective, it should be harder to attract the sponsors. But again, I'd like to emphasize that, what should be our real solution to overcome our challenges on the adaptation. So in my sense, honestly speaking, I have to admit that there's a kind of a gap between countries and countries on like a funding on the adaptation right now. But in my sense, one of the major reasons should be that, we have little discussion on what should be the substance of the area that we can really collaborate. So I mean that, we need a symbol of the project that we can collaborate each other. So in this regard, ABM and the Subaru project must be very important. So for example, let me announce my favorite, how can I say, technology that Japanese companies provide. So for example, Japanese company has a kind of technology of the kind of a remote sensing by satellite to estimate what area can be flooded after the heavy rain. And then it can give the kind of the, how can I say, evacuation pathway for the civilians. So it should be much cheaper to build the breakwater, which means that, we can save much more people with, with how can I say, little cost. So in this regard, anyway, we need a kind of the such a substance in order to talk more collaboratively on the funding. So in this regard, let's, how can I say, I really appreciate, this event because I'm so happy that, all the people really focus on the substance rather than, just talking about, money giving or funding or like that. So this is very important. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Well, now I want to echo that. I mean, I'm sick of blah blah. I switch off now. I've heard too many commitments about mobilizing funding, and I'm so excited about this because I really do see an opportunity to put money into activities. And so, of course, now the thing that we're lacking in this whole picture is this demand for the certified adaptation benefits, and that's the bit that we really need to make progress on. And it goes back to what I said at the start, that governments have focused very much on asking emitters and requiring emitters to pay for mitigation, and they've taken responsibility for adaptation. But I think now is a great time to point out to governments that the ODA model is not working. Their ODA money is decreasing whilst the demand for grant money is increasing. So it's clearly not going to work. And it is time to start asking emitters to contribute towards the cost of adaptation. Demonstrating that the ABM can work and can be a cost-effective and transparent means of deploying that money would give governments the confidence to make that step. It goes back also to the Kyoto Protocol. We used to call those instruments the flexibility mechanisms because it gave governments flexibility in how to meet targets, and therefore they were confident that they could take on a target. Those of you who remember the Kyoto Protocol, developed country governments took a target to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and they had these flexibility instruments to help them meet that. Now, we know the Kyoto Protocol then failed, but that concept of providing flexibility is really important. And I was also very heartened to hear Gibson's point about many donors now wanting to find ways of providing financial support without creating carbon credits and needing a mechanism that can be credible and transparent so they can see what it is that they're going to, what they're paying for. And as the global goals on adaptation are hopefully agreed, we will integrate those into the adaptation benefits mechanism so that buyers of adaptation benefits will be able to say, yes, I want to buy these ones because they're addressing these global goals on adaptation. And alongside the SDGs, we'll be able to help them focus on which goals they want to deliver. Now, we have a few minutes left. I'd like to invite the audience if you have any questions. Yes, great. We've got a lady at the front here. Please say, and then the gentleman beside. So please say your name and who you want to ask the question to, and then go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alejandra, and I'm a journalist with Carbon Pulse. And not to get into the economics of it, but to do exactly that, I guess. It seems like the polluter pays principle is envisioned as a major source of demand for certified adaptation benefits. But where is it anticipated that the demand will come from, and through what mechanism? Like, will there be an enforcement mechanism of some kind?
Yeah, my name is Peter Hilliges from KfW Development Bank. So very fascinating presentation that you've given. Actually, it's the first one that I heard about Article 6.8, so that's a new one for me. When I listen to your projects and activities, it sounds a lot like a results-based finance mechanism. And so the huge benefit I can see in this ABM, as the overarching tool is that you will be able to channel money to small-scale activities. So I'm working for a bank. We do a lot of adaptation finance, and we always do rather large activities. And we always have the problem that we don't reach to the small-scale players. And so that sounds to me like the big advantage, which could give the confidence also to donors, but also maybe to private players, and that links to your question, who would be motivated for whatever reason to put money into this. So I just wanted to comment that and see whether I'm on the right track or not.
Thank you very much. So we've got two really good questions. Who in the panel would like to respond? Amani.
Yeah, in terms of demand about certified adaptation benefit, I will say that, frankly, our methodology got validated not this year, and people are not demanding right now. Why? Because they are not well informed yet. but it exists based on the experience that we are having currently in Cote d'Ivoire. We realize that we have the chocolate industry, which is there, and the cocoa producer and the regulatory body, what we call Conseil Café Cacao, is on the other side. And the chocolate industry want to invest in cocoa, but they need something material to take credential of what the investment generated. So up to now, what they have been doing is only going to the mitigation side. And when we went to them and we said, I'm talking about the regulatory body of cocoa, about the adaptation benefit, the first thing that came out, they said, no, this is filling a gap. So this is quite something new that this exchange is just last only weeks ago. So we will go into there to explain to them how it works, and they will inform them that what they are missing is called a certified adaptation benefit. Yes. So I'm really optimistic that the demand is coming, because it exists, but they don't know the name. There are some
That's
gaps.
really good.
Yes.
It exists, but they don't know the name. I like that. Anybody else like to answer either of these questions? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. So let me talk about the demand. So I don't remember whether this word is coming from Steve Jobs or some of the McKinsey, the CEO. So, but anyway, he said that we cannot want what we do not know. So, which means that, for example, if we see, we cannot imagine to want iPhone, before we do not know the iPhone. So, in this regard, so please join the Subaru project, and that we can provide some technologies. For example, I have already shared one example of the satellite sensing, and for example, let me share another, how can you say, adaptation solutions. Should be the fertilizer. The fertilizer can, the new fertilizer can make the how can you say, the crop more durable against the heat. So which contribute not only the, how can you say, increase the amount of the product, but also it will stabilize the, how can you say, against the weather, global warming or like that. Maybe that should be very helpful for some municipalities in Africa or the other continent. But I hope some already knows this technology, but maybe it's for so many people it should be new to know. And then after that, maybe I hope some of you know that, oh, I want it or that. That should be a kind of process. Actually, demand can be, again, provided through the experience or knowledge. In this regard, again, I would like to emphasize that collaboration with ABM and the Subaru project is very important. Honestly speaking, that currently the guest of the Subaru project, the municipality is only Asia Pacific. But I'm very happy to welcome, if in African countries or other continent countries, happy to join. We are very welcome. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I think, we've heard for our journalist lady, so, some demand may come from it's good business sense for the chocolate sector. If you have a supply chain, it's good business sense to invest into your supply chain. Some companies may be doing that as part of their CSR activities already. This is a more formalized way of doing it, and that money could be captured through the enhanced transparency framework and declared as adaptation finance. Countries can also invest in their own adaptation benefits. It doesn't need to be a country to country. It can be an internal domestic activity. But ultimately, I do see a time when all emitters are required to spend money on adaptation. And if emitters responsible for 25% of global emissions spent $10 per ton of CO2 that they emit purchasing certified adaptation benefits, that would generate more than $100 billion a year of new funding that would be going in directly to overcome the financial barriers to adaptation projects. That is 1/3 of the NCQG. It would go a long way towards balancing investment in adaptation and mitigation, and I think it would start to set us on a track to reach the Baku to Belém roadmap of 1.3 trillion. And Peter, I just see you're going now, but don't go. I'd like to get your business card. Yes, definitely. It is a results-based payment program, but you get to define the results that you want to deliver. and you talk to the buyer, and you work out what it is the buyer wants to pay for. So I think of it as like results based on steroids kind of thing. You can do whatever you want. It's very good for small-scale projects because we internalize the transaction costs in the price of the adaptation benefit. So we're not, biased against small projects. There are plenty of people who want to support small projects, and yes, the transaction costs are higher, but it all gets swallowed up in the price of the adaptation benefits. So we're very happy to see small projects coming alongside the large projects. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is 6 o'clock. We have finished right on time. Thank you very much indeed for sticking with us. It's been a really great panel. Please put your hands together to show your appreciation to our great speakers, and to Gibson and Monique, who's also had to leave, I think. I wish you a good evening. Bon appetit. And come and get a brochure if you want one.